Jack Dorsey, after being the CEO of Twitter, and I don't want to have to go into the history of it, but recently, of course, as you well know, banned Donald Trump from the platform, which led to a cascade effect that got Donald Trump effectively deplatformed from everything, including certain banks, New York contracts, things like this. It appears to just be all of I don't know how to describe it other than the cathedral, the sort of left-wing establishment that all buys in to the left-wing narrative of the world, have all turned on him and done their best to deplatform him. And we got a statement from Jack Dorsey yesterday on Twitter, a series of statements in a long Twitter thread in which he essentially tries to justify this. Now, this led to Tim Pool essentially calling him evil on his podcast yesterday. Tim has spoken to him a number of times and just thinks that he's a flat-out liar. I also agree, frankly, and think Jack Dorsey sounds like something of a supervillain at this point, like a kind of Hank Scorpio or something, where he's in control of a remarkable amount of the online political discourse, and he's aware of it, and he's leveraging this power. But anyway, let's get into what he said. He says, "I do not celebrate or feel pride in our having to ban real Donald Trump from Twitter, or how we got here. After a clear warning we'd take this action, we made a decision with the best information we had based on threats to physical safety, both on and off Twitter. Was this correct?" No, I don't agree that that's correct. I don't agree that Trump threatened anyone. I don't agree that Twitter should have an editorial policy regarding censoring the President of the United States. I don't agree with any of this.
But you'll notice he says there, based on threats, physical safety, both on and off Twitter. He doesn't mention those threats came from Donald Trump at all.
No, but what kind of physical safety can be threatened on Twitter?
Yeah, but the point...
All physical safety has to be threatened off Twitter.
But my point was more, someone else threats someone's physical safety and I get banned?
Yeah.
Like, for what?
Well, yeah, but you're right. He's using deliberately vague language there. I believe this was the right decision for Twitter. We faced an extraordinary and untenable circumstance, forcing us to focus all of our actions on public safety. Offline harm as a result of online speech is demonstrably real, and what drives our policy and enforcement above all. Okay, so, interestingly, Jack has just tied Twitter to violence. So if the deplatforming of Parler is justified by incitement to violence happening on Parler, well, Jack admits that the same happens on Twitter. Why should Twitter not get the same result? But what annoys me the most here is that Jack is acting like he's saving the world. He is attaching to himself an oversized significance in the play of politics. Public safety is not Jack Dorsey's responsibility. No one elected him to it. No one holds him accountable for it. His position in this is that he is the owner of a platform, not a publisher. There are agencies, laws, procedures in place to deal with people who commit crimes inspired by events on Twitter or not. Who elected Jack? The answer is nobody. He carries on. That said, having to ban an account has real and significant ramifications. While there are clear and obvious exceptions, I feel a ban is a failure of ours ultimately to promote healthy conversation and a time for us to reflect on our operations and environment around us. That's staggering. It's a failure to be honest, really. And Trump did not call for violence, so silencing him is wrong, obviously. But the failure on Jack's part is not adopting a neutral stance towards the conversations that are taking place on Twitter and the interactions that are happening. But to be honest with you, doesn't everyone agree at this point that Twitter is what is driving the division? The radicalism that comes out, that is fomented by the left on Twitter, always comes. It informs the media. And several media outlets have banned their journalists from even using Twitter at this point, or at least recommended they stop using Twitter. And it obviously affects the way that politicians think. So Twitter appears to be radicalizing the political classes on the left.
Largely because the political right was late to the game of getting on Twitter, in my view.
Oh, completely.
And now you've started to see some radicalization, but not really on the right.
Yeah, absolutely. He carries on. Having to take these actions fragments the public conversation. They divide us. They limit the potential for clarification, redemption, and learning, and sets a precedent I feel is dangerous. The power an individual or corporation has over part of the global public conversation. I can hardly believe this is coming out of his mouth. He's saying, look, I'm a dangerous lunatic. I've got too much power. Why is everyone letting me have this much power? Is this a cry for help, Jack?
It's like disavowing himself.
Yes, he is. He is actually condemning himself in the position that he is in here. It's like, Jack, I'm pretty sure you could retire anytime you want. You know, you could just, I've got enough money, I'll just go off into the desert and be a hermit or something like that.
Look up his net wealth.
It's going to be millions. This is, I mean, deeply ironic in every way, because Jack has spoken about redemption before, but he's taken absolutely no action to show that he means it or is any way interested in it. It just seems to be a rhetorical platitude. He says because he knows it's what the people who oppose him want to hear, and it makes him sound like he's doing some sort of personal accountability, even though no one is, he's not accountable to anyone apart from, I suppose, the shareholders, and hopefully, I suppose, from his position, it keeps us in our place. I can't get over this. He's disavows his own position. It's like, well, why are you taking it then? You hypocrite. Anyway, he says
there's a gun to his head.
the check and accountability on this power has always been the fact that a service like Twitter is one small part of the larger public conversation happening across the internet. If folks do not agree with our rules and enforcement, they can simply go to another internet service. Oh my God. Like, it's just, it's unreal. I can see why Tim Pool thinks Jack Dorsey is evil. You know, as I said, he just seems like a supervillain to me, a delusional supervillain.
You could just go elsewhere.
Yeah.
But we just banned it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, Parler's gone.
John Matsey was like, well, we don't know if we're ever going to get Parler back online at the way things are going, because they're getting deplatformed by just every company, because they've had this scarlet letter put on them by Silicon Valley, Apple, Google, and Facebook, and they're just like, well, you know, that's it. Sorry, nothing here. You're just dead. We have executed you. This digital execution is permanent. That's that's part of the cartel that Jack Dorsey's a part of. But yeah, and this is also, though, Jack openly declaring how he exercises Twitter's editorial power throughout this entire thread. He's saying, look, we have our own way of doing this, and you're going to... I mean, Twitter's editorial power and is baked into the rules, as Tim Pool pointed out, like the gender issue, right? If you misgender someone on Twitter, you get suspended. So who on earth cares about that? Well, the answer is the radical left. And so this is a radical left-wing agenda that is being enacted in Twitter's own policies. And if you do object, they're going to get the entire platform you're on deplatformed. So, you know, this is just mad. And then like the idea that he brings up accountability on power, there's no way of holding him accountable. And power exercised without accountability is tyranny. Arbitrary power is tyranny. And Jack Dorsey is not only admitting that he has arbitrary power, that it's not accountable to anyone, and that he laments this. So this is him sort of sorrowfully saying, well, I'm so sorry that I'm a tyrant. It's like, well, then you could stop being a tyrant at any point. Anyway, he carries on. The concept was challenged last week when a number of foundational internet tool providers also decided not to host what they found dangerous. I do not believe this was coordinated. More likely, companies came to their own conclusions and were emboldened by the actions of others. You liar. You absolute liar. We have seen this cartel in action multiple times. Right, the first one would be the deplatforming of me from Patreon, and then I went to a platform called Maker Support, which was in no way unusual. It was just a competitor, and that was deplatformed by the payment processors. And then we got to see the mass deplatforming of Alex Jones, and literally all of the Silicon Valley tech CEOs were looking at Twitter because Twitter was the last one to do it, and Jack himself came out and said, well, Alex Jones so far has not broken any of our rules. And then within a week, Alex Jones had been found to have broken a rule mysteriously, and then suddenly he's gone too. Unreal. And we have also Jack Conte in his 2018 Rubin Report interview, where he admitted that Silicon Valley CEOs talk to each other. They're in cahoots. We know they are.
They're in group chats together. They discuss what's going on in their companies.
Yeah, we know that they coordinate. And so the idea that he can just come out and say, well, you know, I don't believe this was coordinated. Jack, we know you are a liar. We know, and we know that you know that we know that you're a liar. So don't go through this charade with us. He carries on. This moment in time might call for this dynamic, but over the long term it will be destructive to the noble purpose and ideals of the open internet. A company making business decision to moderate itself is different from a government removing access, yet it can feel much the same. This to me, I mean, like the idea that, oh, this is going to be bad for the free and open internet. Well, you could stop doing it, Jack. Why don't you just stop doing it? Why don't you stop putting people up against the digital wall and blowing their digital brains out? Because I'm really tired of the number of people getting deplatformed.
Look at that doublethink there, though.
It's
like
unreal.
a business decision to moderate itself is different from a government removing access. How? How are they different?
Yeah.
Except that I'm just a private company, I can do what I want is the defense.
Exactly, which is why they feel much the same.
God,
But
imagine if taking slaves was legal or something.
Yeah.
You know, he's like, well, I'm a private company, therefore it's not the same as if the government did it.
if that's his argument, why is it bad to enslave people?
He's got nothing.
Like, he's got nothing. Yeah, exactly. He can't argue from that perspective. But I think this is also sort of signaling to the other cartel members as a kind of warning, saying, look, what we are doing here is brutal, frankly. It's aggressive. And
I think the plebs are noticing.
yeah, exactly. And this is going to be destructive to the noble purpose and ideals of the open internet that you're busy destroying, Jack. Unreal. Anyway, he says, yes, we all need to look critically at inconsistencies of our policy and enforcement. Yes, we need to look at how our service might incentivize distraction and harm. Yes, we need more transparency in our moderation operations. All of this can't erode a free and open global internet. These are just empty words to overlay his brutalization of the right wing. Restore the President of the United States to his Twitter account, Jack. The President of the United States legally is not allowed to block people, and I can't believe that legally that means that you're allowed to deplatform him. That Twitter account is now kind of out of your hands. It has been legally declared to be part of the public square, and there can be privately owned public spaces in US law, and so this is not just simply black and white, and it should not simply be in your hands to make these decisions. And I think that at some point, governments will realize that social media moderation and deplatformings should not be left to those companies that own the platform itself. And I think that essentially what we're going to see in the future that comes out of all this is a kind of deferring of the responsibility of deplatforming. There will be some kind of government agency that has to be set up and review claims that have come in about a particular account to deplatform or not, and whether to reinstate. I think that the power to remove these people from the service or reinstate them should be deferred to a body that can be held accountable, because that's the problem. There is absolutely no accountability here, but Jack has decided that the public have no business hearing from the democratically elected President of the United States.
I mean, imagine if every printing press in the United States decided to do this. If they formed a little cartel and said, we're not publishing books that we don't like from Republicans.
Yeah.
Like, what would you do?
Well, they're going to do that. They did that to Josh Hawley.
But luckily, the general theme in the United States for printing presses, as low as an issue that could be, seems to be that everyone accepts that that's part of it. Therefore, there's no reason yet for the government to get involved.
Yeah.
But if they do decide to cartel, I don't know, the construction of printing presses is also becoming hard. Becomes unionized in part of the cartel.
Yeah.
What do? Well, you've got to get the state to involve themselves to restore the right to free speech.
Yeah. And there are antitrust, anti-monopoly laws in the United States already. It's a known problem with capitalism that can lead to these kind of oppressive monopolies, which is, we accept that there are problems with capitalism, but they can easily be fixed with anti-monopoly laws. So why can't we just use them? Anyway, he goes on about Bitcoin, saying he has so much passion for Bitcoin largely because of the model it demonstrates, a foundational internet technology that is not controlled or influenced by any single individual entity. Again, lamenting that he's in charge of the tyranny.
God, I love Bitcoin because it's not like me.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't do evil things to people like I do. This is what the internet wants to be, and over time, more of it will be. We are trying to do our part by funding an initiative around an open, decentralized standard for social media, a client that he'll call Blue Sky. Would you trust an app or a thing that Jack Dorsey had built? Him going, this is going to prevent tyranny on the internet, guys, says the evil tyrant.
Yeah.
Sorry, no. But anyway.
Kind of reminds me, we read a book about Mao Zedong's was a Great Leap Forward.
Yeah.
There's a great section where he's deciding that all the intellectuals should come forwards and criticize the party, and therefore we can have things go forward. And then when they do, he just gets them all killed.
Yes, let a thousand flowers bloom, or whatever it is.
Yeah,
and then everyone's like, because he's expecting positive words of the government. Everyone's like, oh, the government's evil. He's like, right, off their heads.
So guys, get on Blue Sky, get on Signal, and then he's just going to kill you again.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But anyway, the point is, Jack Dorsey appears to be just a serial liar and psychopath. He is quite happy to say one thing, espouse one set of principles, and then act totally contrary to these things, and then lament his own actions abstractly, as if he is not in control of the things that he is doing, which is insufferable, right? He carries on with, it's important to acknowledge that this is a time of great uncertainty and struggle for many around the world. Our goal at the moment is to disarm as much as we can and ensure that we are building towards a greater common understanding and a more peaceful existence on Earth. Bull. Just absolute lies, right? If you wanted to disarm, to lower the temperature and build towards a greater common understanding and more peaceful existence, Jack is achieving the exact opposite. Twitter is a locus of the problem. Their own unassailable echo chamber of the left is dominating politics at the moment. And this is, I think, definitely radicalizing people. I mean, it's not like the deplatforming of Donald Trump, I think, alone would have been bad enough. But then for the Silicon Valley cartel to go after Parler as well, and dozens of other conservatives around it, this is radicalizing people. I'm absolutely convinced of it. I see it in all the comment sections. I see people just saying it on the internet, just not to me, just in groups that I'm a part of. And, you know, when I'm watching conversations on various different platforms, people are really getting quite stressed out about this, it seems, from my experience.
Funnily enough, censoring a political movement doesn't make it go away. It makes them annoyed. I mean, surprise, surprise.
Yeah, it makes them angry. But anyway, Jack finishes with, I believe the internet and global public conversation is our best and most relevant method of achieving this, which is why you're taking such steps to censor it. What the hell are you talking about? Like, I also recognize that it does not feel that way today. Everything we learn in this moment will better our effort to push us what we are, one humanity working together, right? That's terrifying, because that implies that the people that he deplatformed are de facto not human.
They're
by
not
this
part
standard.
of the one humanity, are they?
Exactly. They are no longer human. These people need to go so the humans can survive, right? It's a terrifying thought process that informs Jack's decisions, and I don't believe that he believes it. And if he does believe it, that's even worse. Yeah. So Tim Pool may well be right. Jack Dorsey may well be evil. And if not evil, just in total denial of the evil that he perpetuates, which is just as bad. And then we come to the Project Veritas drop, which came after this, I believe. And this was James O'Keefe retweeted that thread going, look, Jack, we have insiders at Twitter who have been recording all your stuff and have been sending it to us.
For months.
You're in trouble, right? And so this was the first Project Veritas leak, which was, as you can see, from the 8th of January. So it was on the day that they deplatformed Donald Trump. They knew it was going to affect Trump and all his supporters, and they know it's going to go on for some time. Let's watch it.
We do intend to do a full retro, as I said in my note. It is going to take some time. And then the other thing, just to close out a little bit, we are focused on one account right now, but this is going to be much bigger than just one account, and it's going to go on for much longer than just this day, this week, the next few weeks. It's going to go on beyond the inauguration. We have to expect that. We have to be ready for that. So the focus is certainly on this account and how it ties to real world violence, but also we need to think much longer term around how these dynamics play out over time. I don't believe this is going away anytime soon, and the moves that we're making today around QAnon, for instance, is one such example of a much broader approach that we should be looking at and going deeper on. So the team has a lot of work and a lot of focus on this particular issue. We also need to give them the space and the support to focus on the much bigger picture, because it is not going away. The U.S. is extremely divided. Our platform is showing that every single day, and our role is to protect the integrity of that conversation and do what we can to make sure that no one is being harmed based off that. And that is the focus, and that is the color we want to provide.
We must protect the integrity of that conversation.
Yeah.
After talking about the fact that he's going to not only ban Donald Trump, but he's going to go much further. And then after the inauguration...
All the QAnon supporters.
No, but after the inauguration, it's still going to go on. He's still going to be banning people.
Yeah.
But we must protect the integrity of that conversation.
Yeah.
You
Protecting
mean
the integrity of the conversation means digitally gulagging all of these people.
All the distance have to go.
Yeah, exactly. And this ties in directly to the last tweet, pushing together to be one humanity working together. I mean, A, that sounds kind of fascist. But B, that means that the people who are not part of humanity, for Jack, need to be mass deplatformed and to protect the integrity of the conversation, as in the integrity of the race or something is how this is sounding to me, like the purity of the thing. And this seems to be his attempt to remake the internet. Like, he seems to feel like he's on the cutting edge of remaking the internet altogether, and the terrible things will have to be done. As he was saying, the businesses feel that they have to do this. It's like, well, I mean, I guess if you're going full-on totalitarian, you do. A pluralistic liberal society doesn't need to do this at all. And
all the other businesses just coincidentally agreed.
Yeah, they all just happen to agree with Jack's fascist view of the internet. But yeah, so this is not new. It's been happening for a while. It's going to carry on happening, and it's something they have planned in advance. So it's not surprising that people look at Silicon Valley as if it's basically the social media Gestapo of the Biden regime. I don't know who Fret's capo is on Minds, but I saw this going around, and this is amazing. This is exactly how I picture it, to be honest. With the blue armbands for each one. It's terrible thing that they're doing at the moment. But I mean, there is a price to pay for all of this. That is billions in lost stock value, as reported by Business Insider. Facebook and Twitter have collectively seen 51.2 billion erased from their market caps. Facebook taking 47.6 of this because Facebook is an actual Silicon Valley giant, whereas Twitter is a much smaller thing and lost 3.5 billion. But I mean, that is still billions. But anyway, both companies announced they would permanently ban the president because he poses a too large a risk of additional violence. But anyway, so this is where we are. I think that Silicon Valley is basically run by tyrants and terrifying people who exercise power without accountability.